Happiness is our birthright. Today I'm going to invite a special guest who just became a new member up on the stage, and we're going to hear a little bit about her expertise. And I met Robin when I was teaching one of the prosperity classes. So see what happens when you take my class? You might show up on this very stage with me. So I want to give you a little bit of her background, and then I'd like you to do a nice warm welcome. So Robin, I said we met in our class, and she owns a coaching company, Surpass Your Goals. Surpass Your Goals. How rich is that? She has a master's in psychology, and she's working on her doctorate in human behavior. Yeah, so she might know a little bit about us folks. And then we're going to share together the happiness, the secrets to a happier life, and the science behind happiness. We know that when Charles Fillmore talked about principles, he said, let's bring those into our everyday world, that we can live these principles, apply them practically. So will you please help me welcome Robin Levitch. Well, one of the first questions that we were talking about before we got on the stage together is just the definition. What is happiness? Now, I'm cheating a little bit because I'm using this book, The Happiness Project, that I found in one of my other classes, and Robin's going to use her expertise. But I do want to open the floor and just ask, what is happiness?
A lot of times we think happiness is like constantly jumping for joy and being excited all the time, and there's actually three different types of happiness. There's pleasure in the moment, a good meal, entertainment. The second level is being in flow, and being in flow is all about being fully engaged. When you really enjoy something that's slightly challenging, time goes by as if nothing. That's actually related to health and happiness. And then the last component of happiness is meaning and purpose in life. And if you feel like you're contributing to the world and you have a sense of purpose, you'll notice that that's not happy, jumping around, jumping for joy. It's more content and it's more meaningful, but all of those are actually related to happiness. And happiness is about positive emotions in the moment as well as a positive outlook in the future.
So don't we talk about that in Unity? That our mind, the way that we think, our thoughts, or what our life is a projection of our thoughts, right? So if we stay in this cloudy place, which we're entitled to do at times, and we want to shift that vibration, we want to shift that energy, we do it in our thoughts. So I wanted to share, and I'm sure that Robin is familiar with some of these folks, when we're saying, is it our natural birthright? What might some of our master teachers say? And the founding father, Benjamin Franklin, the patron saint of self-realization, he has this to say. He identifies 13 virtues that he wants to cultivate, things like temperance and silence and order and resolution. And I'm thinking, if y'all recall, Myrtle Fillmore talked about the divine order in your mind of your thoughts, right? So it's where your thoughts are that will flow that level of your energy, your feelings. And if you're in a place that is uncomfortable, we have the natural inclination, should we choose, to shift where that is coming from. Doesn't mean you don't face adversity or challenges in your life, but how you see them is how the reflection is going to be apparent to the people around you and also through your life.
Yes, it depends on what we choose to focus on. And happiness and positive emotions, sometimes there's a boomerang effect where we feel like, I should be happy, and right now I'm not happy, and then that actually just makes it worse. So happiness is not about always having positive emotions. It's about recognizing the thoughts that we have, experiencing those emotions, and then choosing to focus on something else.
Yeah, so when Benjamin Franklin was having his thoughts about what's important, what adds value to his life, what could create happiness, he said it's easier if we will form something measurable. And that's where my talk title came about the 10 commandments of happiness. Not that you have to follow 10 or 13, but when you have a mindset that you choose to be happy, that you discipline your thoughts to concentrate and focus on that which you want to create more of, that vision expands. So this author, Gretchen Rubin, in the Happiness Project, went through a series of each month focused on an area to create happiness. And for instance, we talked about in our prosperity classes, relationships. Relationships, they are the cornerstone for most of us in where we receive and where we have an opportunity to give from the heart space. But if we're looking for someone outside of us to create our happiness, you're likely to be disappointed because that happiness comes from within.
I think that's the hardest part for people, is to recognize that happiness and joy is a choice. I just had a client the other day that said, my husband says I'm negative all the time. And she had a hard time experiencing, just even feeling what joy and gratitude actually felt like. And so I asked her, how do you go about experiencing joy? And she thought about it for a second, and she said, I guess I just choose it. And so she had to connect with what that actually felt like. But she had to first recognize that it was her mindset, her thoughts on what she wanted to focus on first.
When you think about that, when you think about what is happiness to you, the experts say it's what you choose it to be. So what thrills me and turns me on and creates a happy spot for me may be very different for you. And is joy slightly different? Is it a gentle happiness? Is wild happiness something completely different? If you're going to sleep in here, you're not in the right place. But I mean, you know, an event can occur that stirs you up, but that long-term happiness is not likely to be a single event.
No, and there's different types of positive emotions. So gratitude is one, joy is one. Interest is also a positive emotion, which I find curious in and of itself. And that's not wild, high energy, right? That's just being curious about things. So there's all kinds of different flavors of positive emotions, and you might find that you're more drawn to some than others. But here's the thing that I think confuses people, is not only do they think happiness is outside of themselves, but they keep waiting for happiness. So they look at what are the circumstances in my life, and if I get the job I want, if I get the promotion I want, if I have the family I want, there's all these ifs. And so if all of that happens, then at some later point, I'll end up being happy. And it doesn't work that way. That's a broken model. We choose to be happy. And what's fascinating is when we're happy, we actually see more opportunities. We're more creative. Happy people tend to be perceived as more likable. They make more money. They're seen as more attractive, which is the best anti-youth ever, is just smile. So there's lots that we can do, but we start with being happy, and then that actually affects what we have in our lives.
I think that kind of follows what we talk about in unity, that a vibration, right? So if you set the intention that you are going to be a happy person, that you are content in the now moment, other people will feel that vibration, and you will attract more people around you that are sensing and feeling the same way, because it tends to be that those people in a resonance with the same vibration that you are, they gather together. That's even science.
Yes.
That it will gather together, like attracts like, and we might talk about magnets repel, and then someone says, flip them over, and they still stay connected.
Yeah, emotions release neurochemical reactions in our body that are actually contagious. So if you're a very negative person, I call that splat, because you don't realize it, but you're splatting negativity on other people. And you feel it when you're on the receiving end of it. Well, the same is true for positivity, that we can spread kindness and positivity in all kinds of different ways.
So when I'm reading this little story, and she's talking about being in the present moment, and how might you recognize something that you can preserve that'll bring you happiness at a later time. And she said, just do a one-sentence journal of something that you recognize in the moment. And she's using the example that they've gone on a vacation. And the vacation's been a week long at the beach, and they've had a really good time. And in the very last moment, they're taking a ferry from one place to another as the vacation's ending, and all these thoughts are stirring in her head. And she stops in that moment and watches her little girl go up and down the stairs with great joy, up and down the stairs. And the mom recognizes that in itself brought her great happiness. It didn't have to be a spectacular event. It didn't have to be an earth-crashing anything. It was just the simplicity of the everyday life.
If we look at some of the principles in unity, the meditation, the visualization, those are all avenues where we actually shift what we focus on in our brain that actually creates happiness. So one of the things I do is I create a picture in my head that creates happiness. So one of them is my dog loves being in the car, and I can see him hanging his head out the window in just sheer delight. And so in that moment, I almost take a picture in my brain, and it just makes me happy thinking about it. But I have the ability to bring that picture up and visualize that at any moment, and just visualizing that actually shifts things. So we can focus on the things that really do bring us joy and choose it just by focusing on it.
You know, I love that she said that. I used to have 3 girlfriends that we ran around the Atlanta area together. We might take vacations together, but every time we knew we were gathering, we'd each, without talking to the other, bring a little, what we called a happy. And the happy could be an adult beverage. The happy could be a memento from a travel that we did before, or it could just be a story. So every time we got together, we knew that we were going to share in this forum of an energy that we wanted to be in and to honor each other. And just to do that little happy was just a place of connection with each other. Because happiness draws people together, and you want more of what works for you. Talk a little bit about the science about the happiness, what our brain chemistries do when we light up.
So studies actually show there's a theory called broaden and build. So positive emotions actually activate different parts of the brain, and that activation leads to more positive emotions. It also gives us the ability to activate more resources, be far more creative. And so a lot of times if I'm working on a project at work and I'm in a funk and I'm not in a good space, I'm very limited to how I can approach that. But if I want to improve my performance and do a better job, then I can put myself in a positive state, and that actually enhances my creativity and enhances the outcome. And so the brain studies actually show that it lights up different parts of your brain. And if you think about somebody who is very angry, if you ever watch their eyes, right? Their eyes dart because they dilate, and what ends up happening is they're zeroing in on that thing that's a potential threat, and then they're separating out everything else. And positivity has the opposite effect. It actually literally expands our peripheral vision so that we begin to see things differently, including all kinds of new opportunities.
Have you ever heard the phrase, fake it till you make it? Yeah? So that is setting your intention that even though the circumstances around you might look in a way that you don't want to add more to it, when you shift your mindset, when you shift it and you fake it till you make it, you're allowing yourself to go into a space that is what you want to create more of. And the more you get in that space, the more it multiplies. And you begin to become aware of things that are happening that you may not have seen before, and it brings you joy because you do it in the simplicity, and the simplicity often of small things. And we often use the example that when you're going into the grocery store and you know the person behind that counter has been there 6-7 hours and they are just putting those things across the conveyor belt, doing the best they can, they've been standing, they're tired, and you stop and you look at them and you acknowledge them and you're kind and you say something nice. Do you see them light up? Because someone has acknowledged them, found value in what they're doing. And I promise when they walk away, you, of the small thing that you did, had a lasting impact.
I was thinking about that one time going through the drive-thru. I realized the number of people that go through the drive-thru that don't actually look at the person, like really look at the person that gives them food. And I noticed it because I gave them direct eye contact and actually saw them light up. And that's when I thought, oh my God, how many times have I done this without actually acknowledging another person? And, you know, just the eye contact and having that positive connection in terms of neuroscience literally changes the chemistry as well. The really cool thing too is the more that you learn to harness happiness, the more that you actually change the structure of your brain, and so the easier it actually becomes over time. And you can teach an old dog new tricks. Science proves that now.
So you know what I was thinking? When you come into the sphere of a child, they are so innocent, and they're not shaded, and they don't have this other lens that's going on of world experiences. And when you get to a child's level and you look at them, do you see them just light up and giggle, and they want to show you things, and they want you to come with them? Because that innocence hasn't been jaded yet. They're not looking at a place of fear of, oh my gosh, this didn't work or that didn't work. They're just pure innocence. And they want you to come in their world with them. And what joy we receive in being with those people that don't have this fear of fear and lifetime experiences that make you, are you real? Or do you just want something from me? And in this, the innocence of a child invites you to remember that child within you. And what better place to play in happiness?
You know why children are happy?
Why?
They're in the moment.
Oh.
They're not worried, right? They're not worried about what's school going to be like on Monday, right? Or what happened last week. I can't believe this kid said something. We learn to focus on those things, either worry about what might happen in the future or build resentments for what previously happened in the past. But children are focused completely in the moment. And if we want to harness happiness, that's actually where we receive it, is in the moment.
So with some of your expertise, and I know you've had a number of clients and you help bring joy or other people to understand and recognize where their joy comes from, give us a few pointers. We've talked about the present moment. We've talked about a one-line journal. Give us some hints how we could create more happiness in our life.
So mindfulness, which is in the present moment, that is the easiest one, and that is actually shown to change structures in the brain. So focusing on the present moment. We talked about having a visual image of something that brings you joy and then being able to conjure that up. They've done a lot of studies on gratitude. So one of the things I did a few years ago is every night before I went to bed, I identified 3 things that I was grateful for, different things than what I had previously identified. And you can compound that if you actually share with the people that you're actually grateful for. And there's a lot of questions about whether or not money actually provides happiness, which as long as you have your basic needs met, it really doesn't. What actually buys happiness is social relationships. So if you're going to spend money, you want to spend it giving to people, and you want to spend it on sharing experiences with people. So the social supports we have and those connections that we have with people by far is the strongest element for us to actually build happiness.
You know, I just had the wonderful opportunity of seeing the Van Gogh exhibit for the second time at the Dali, and I want to share something with you. We all know Van Gogh was an amazing artist, but he also was a writer. And I know Judith's in our audience today, and I know Barb is in the audience today, and it was just a delightful time. So I want to share some wisdom from Vincent van Gogh. Great things are done by a series of small things brought together. So when we're talking about this happiness factor, about how to create more joy in our life, it doesn't mean that it has to be fireworks and something spectacular, but just to recognize even the small acts, even though whether you're looking at the, when you're going through the drive-through window and you're just making that eye contact, or you're sitting on a child's level, or like you were saying, just opening your mind to the possibilities of what you can create and shift, because it is funny, in Unity, we say that what you think, you can change those thoughts to create a new reality. And at the same time, where's the feeling capacity in there? Like the chicken and the egg. Does the feeling come first and then the thought? Or does the thought shift and then you feel?
That's a whole other...
Okay,
I have a lot of answers for that one. Both, basically, is the simple answer.
Yeah, an and situation. But I did want to bring Robin up here to share some of her thoughts about how we create more happiness, how we tap into the joy, and maybe just to be centered and focused, thinking about it doesn't have to be something magnanimous. Who you are is enough. When you just take that mindfulness time and know that the reflection that you are in other people, what you bring to the table, that in itself is enough. Do you want to add anything in closing?
Just to be aware of our thoughts. Because a lot of times we're not aware, and they're just running, and they're pretty harsh. So if we can be aware of those and be deliberate about changing it, then we can create whatever we want.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty unity. So at this moment, if we could we just take it in prayer? And maybe just close those outer eyes for a moment and we say, in deep gratitude, thank you for all those willing to show up just as they are, knowing that what we are looking for in the world, we already are. And that joy, that happiness comes from within, and that we can share that at any time in just seeing the same for another person. It doesn't have to be magnanimous. It can be even in the small things that we do. And we are grateful for our teachers. We are grateful that we are students of the truth, always, now, and forevermore. And we say, thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. And thank you, Robin.
Thank you. That was awesome.